Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Hey, it's Michael Sapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Mindy Millward joining us. Mindy, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Mindy, for those who don't know you, explain what you do.
Well, I'm a founding partner and one of the owners of a group called Navalent. And we're a management consulting firm that really focuses on helping organizations across a spectrum of change issues. We help them get a lot of clarity on strategy, set up the organization that can deliver on that strategy, and then spend a fair amount of time working with leaders on their own agenda for change and how they actually get people to follow as they try and put in place a new organization and strategy.
Right. Awesome. And so for those of you regular Consulting Success podcast listeners, you may remember that Ron Carucci came on previously, also a partner in Navalent, and he was the one that really recommended to have Mindy come on here because she brings quite an interesting background and deep experience moving up the ranks in consulting. So Mindy, really excited to have you here, and let's dive right in. Give us a sense of the types of clients that you guys are currently working with.
That's a great question, and it's actually one of the reasons why we ended up going out on our own and starting Navalent 13, 14 years ago. We wanted to work with clients who are truly interested in change and willing to take some risk to make it happen. And so those clients, a lot of times they're corporate, publicly held institutions. We have a lot of organizations that are Fortune 500, Fortune 200 size, but it also allows us to work with leaders who are leading not-for-profits or startups or smaller businesses that I think a lot of larger consultancies tend to ignore because of being concerned about getting bills paid, right? But we really are looking for leaders who are thinking about change and thinking about their own personal journey in that change and impact that they can have.
Have you always focused or accepted or been open to working with, kind of a wide range of clientele from the Fortune 500 and public companies down to the private, kind of nonprofits and even, like startups? Or has that been more recent for you?
Honestly, there's always been an openness there for a couple of reasons. I think one of the common denominators of our clients are that there actually is a client. There actually is a decider or a decision maker, if you will, on the work. And so that can be a struggle in some types of institutions more than others. So we've done government work. We've done work with educational institutions. And there's a point in times with some of those types of clients for us trying to find someone who has the ability to say, yes, let's do this, or no, that's not part of my agenda can be hard. So I think for us, it's really not about size of organization. It's about the complexity of the problem. It's about our ability to really reach and connect leaders who can have personal impact. And so, we've been pretty open through our whole journey. And I would say it's interesting, the past few years, we've seen quite a bit more in the under $500 million space. So the 100 million to 500 million, which is, a lot of times they weren't looking for consultants, but I think they're looking to supplement kind of the leadership they have internally and knowing they don't have to bring it in-house. They can rent it, if they will, through their relationships. Right.
I ask because a lot of consultants, as they are building their businesses, in the early years especially, find it kind of a best practice, a guiding principle that really helps them is to have clarity around who their ideal client is. And so when I hear you say that you're not focused as much on the size of the company and that you could really work and serve a wide range, to me, I put myself in the position of our listeners here who might be hearing that and saying, well, then, like, how do you go about and do your marketing effectively, or how do you know who to really target and engage? So just what has been your experience around that? Has it just evolved over time, or do you use, like, what kind of criteria do you use then to actually target your ideal clients if there's such a wide range of them?
Well, that's a great question. And in fact, I think other consultancies as well focus in on particular industries, right? So And we don't do that either. So our background and expertise is really in organizational change and what gets real change to happen in the hearts of people and in the core of organizations. So it's not just focused at the individual level, and it's not just focused at the organizational level. So we kind of go across that spectrum. And we have expertise about how you make change work, regardless of whether you're a pharmaceutical or a financial or a CPG type of firm. And so it's interesting. I think if you look at our client list through the past 14 years, it has changed dramatically. Some of that based on what's going on in the general economy and what types of clients are struggling or looking for help in terms of the types of companies they're in. But in terms of kind of reaching those clients, for us, typically it's a CEO. So we have a lot of relationships with what we would call collaborators or finders. So those may be head of human resources. It could be a head of strategy. It could be we've had a lot of relationships with general counsels. So people that are on the team of a leader and they see a leader struggling to really implement change or to really figure out why isn't anyone listening? Why won't they do what I tell them to do? Or why can't my team come together and do what I'm asking them to do? They seem like all good people. So we have had long-term relationships with what I would call those collaborators and finders who reach out to us and find us and know that we can, I think they kind of pre-sell us to clients saying, you have to meet these people. They're not really consultants. And it's funny because I've heard clients use that word a lot. And some of our longer term clients, we have a few clients who've been with us probably 10 or 11 years since almost the beginning of Navalent. And they think of us, they call us a business partner. They call us almost anything but a consultant because they don't come to us sometimes they do, but it's not typically for a project. It's because of the relationship we have with them and the ability to think creatively about the challenges they're having with their own impact and getting change to happen in their organization. So a lot of our clients are word of mouth. We get passed from one client to another. We do work in organizations, and fortunately for us, people go off and find other jobs, so they kind of take us with them. And then it's interesting to the smaller end of our client side, the more startup and everything, we've had some deep connections with like the Young Presidents Club. So where younger CEOs are coming together and talking about their challenges in forums, and there's a lot more networking amongst them today than there used to be. We get shared that way as well. So that's kind of the relationship and networking side of it. And then we do a lot of writing. So when you look at our website, it's content heavy. We do a lot of thinking about change. We do a lot of about leadership. And those pieces are out there in so many different ways that people will pick that up and connect with us through social media, through other ways to find us.
So what I'm really hearing from you is that, you've taken a long-term approach and kind of have a long-term mindset when it comes to your marketing, by focusing very heavily on relationship building and creating authority-based materials and content that may not have an impact right away, but you compound those over time, and they've really helped to carry your business. And from what I'm also hearing is that over time you've maybe shifted a little bit who you're focusing on or the industry, depending on what's happening in the economy, but you have certainly identified specific types of people within organizations, or you do have criteria that you use that guides you in terms of kind of identifying an into the ideal client. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And the first thing you said, I think, is a key point for us, which is around focusing on the relationship first. And it's funny, but we have kind of these stories that we tell within Navalent. We have a few clients, one in particular that the selling cycle was 4 years. And that's a lifetime in a small business and to a consultancy to think that, I'm talking to this potential client for a period of 4 years off and on and still haven't sold them one day of work. But It's actually a funny story. And we started talking with them. They're very much a relationship type of company themselves. So they kind of had to sniff us out, see if they liked us, see if there was, if they like what we were saying. They used a lot of what I would call more gurus. So they have a lot of people come speak to them about really brilliant thoughts, and then they try to do it themselves. So they're not used to working with consultants. So they had to kind of figure out what that would look like. And when they finally called us, they called me and said, hey, we want to start that work that we've been talking to you about. And this was 2014. And I said, do you mean the work that the proposal I wrote you in 2010? And they're like, yeah, that one. It's like,
right.
Okay, let's think about this.
So what's the secret though with that, Mindy? Like I'm just wondering for the consultants that hear you say that and they get it, like it's, they get that relationships are important, that the long-term mindset is valuable, but that can be really hard for people, especially when, maybe they've even built their business to a level of success, but the referrals and the network that carried them for a while is starting to kind of dry up. What do you say to them? I mean, what's the key from your experience to be able to embrace that opportunity, invest in that opportunity for the long term, but still be able to generate revenue? Yeah,
I think that's a great question. And honestly, we're encountering that ourselves. Great consultants age out and their networks age out. People retire. Mm-hmm. So if you are fundamentally a purely networked or relationship demand creation, there's going to be gaps. That's not sustainable in the long term. So you have to do both things. So I think one of the things that's been important to us is keeping that core of always adding value in any conversation we're in, whether we're getting paid or not, right? Mm-hmm. Start with, how am I adding value in this conversation with someone, and not worry about the selling. And honestly, we've got story after story where it's turned in, we've said, this isn't the right fit. And we've kind of said no to work, and it's turned into something much bigger, right? So again, work that piece. But then we have spent a lot of time the past few years saying, how do we, especially, I think consultancies, and we're guilty of this, can be very content heavy. And we're like, we think, people will just find us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen. There's like thousands of small consultancies out there that do what we say we do. Right. So there's just a lot of noise in the system. So I think the getting yourself out there and marketing yourself in ways that also adds value in the time. So as I think about the blogs that we write, the guest blogs that we write, the podcasts we go on, the speaking we do, my partner Ron was just at the TEDx, and all of those interactions are all chances just to get your name familiar with people, right? Like, we used to think, we're going to go to this, we'll pay $20,000 to go to a conference and it'll result in work. Maybe not. Right. And if you think of it as like this one-time event, you're kind of doomed to failure. So it's, what are you doing with your full demand creation kind of process, whether you're a single shop practitioner or not, and how are you in the systems you're in and the engagements you're in looking to expand the value you can provide indifferently? Because I think one of the other problems that happens is you get hired in a certain system and your first piece of work is coaching, and all of a sudden you're the coaching people. And you're like, wait a second, we also do strategy. We also do org design, but you're known as the coaching people. So how do you continue also to expand your reach and impact in the systems you're in is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think mindset is such an important part of that, right? Being able to feel comfortable and like embrace the mindset that this is long term, that you may not see results instantly. I mean, sometimes great things can happen in, very quickly, but in many cases you want to have that mindset for the long term. And that example you just shared of like going to, one event or a conference, investing 20,000 or even if it's 1,000 or, 5,000 or whatever it might be, and hoping that that's going to somehow create the big win for you. It might, but it also probably likely won't. Like, it's going to be one piece that over time does influence and does have an effect, but it's not going to happen necessarily right away. I think, you mentioned kind of that like the comparison of a smaller firm and a larger firm. This is another area where I see a lot of consultants have some mindsets or challenges around. How do you guys compete with larger firms? I mean, does that ever enter into your mind? Like, did you ever have that feeling of, oh, we can't go after that client because the big firms, they like, why would they work with us? What's your experience been with that?
That's a great question. And I think there's a couple of answers to it. One is, you have to understand what capacity you have, and it doesn't have to be within your firm necessarily. So the building out of associated resources and networks that you can rely on if you need to supplement your capacity becomes really important. So we have a set of consultants who worked with us off and on probably since 2009 or 8 that we pull in when we've all of a sudden sold too much work, right? And so they know us. They have our business card. They go in as Navalent, not as their sole practitioner shop in their other life, if you will. We've invested a fair amount of time getting to know each other and getting aligned around methodology and how we think about clients. So we have capacity when we oversell, if you will, if you think about it.
Right.
And it's like we honestly have never shied away from selling huge pieces of work. And there have been, I was just, this is a great story. I just like 3 weeks ago asked by a client, potential client, and they've been a client off and on for a few pieces of work since probably 2007, not consistently, but they'll call us every once in a while. And their internal kind of organization development people will refer their business people to us. They've kind of gutted their whole internal OD group. So now there's no one internally do that work, but they say, if you're going to do organization design, you should call Navalent. So they'll call us, and they called 3 weeks ago and they said, we've got this piece of work. We're interested in merging together 2 business units. We're talking to 4 different consulting firms. We'd like you to be part of the RFP process. Please submit your proposal on this date, and then we'll have a call for 45 minutes to discuss your proposal. And I declined. And I know that they were dealing with a couple of huge strategy firms and one that's kind of out of the IT accounting space. You guys would recognize all 3 of the other competitors as these giant firms. And they're firms that probably do tens of millions of dollars with this client per year. Are already in there. And the client was like, I beg your pardon. And I said, it's not worth our time to do an RFP process. We don't sell through an RFP. Us not meeting the business people doesn't add value. We don't know if it's a good fit for us. It's great that you can send us this deck that gives us the background, but it's not really context that's going to be helpful. And, it's thanks, but no thank you. And I said, instead, if you're really interested, I'll go ahead and have the phone call with you if you have the business people on the line, because this was, again, a finder. I think it was a procurement person and a HR person. So they allowed it to go. The other 3 firms submitted a big proposal in their RFP process. And for us, instead, we had a 45-minute call with the 2 business unit leads and the, procurement and the HR person. And afterwards, they're like, well, we're still really interested in talking to you. I'm like, okay, I'm still not going to write you a proposal because it's a big investment. And we have found that doing that, we don't win those.
Right.
So why do them? And our proposal is never going to look as fancy as the 100 slides deck and the Excel and all that kind of stuff. So I said, okay, I'll put together 2 slides that will tell you what I just told you about, what we think is important. And so I sent them 2 slides on approach. One slide had, here's what your investment would be if you worked with us. And then the 4th slide was, if you don't hire us and you hire one of those other firms, that's great. Make sure you still do the following 3 things. So I was still consulting to them in the moment. We'll find out the end of this week whether we get that work. But I do know that selling blindly to a procurement organization to an RFP against a big firm like that, we're never going to win it. And it's a waste of our time.
Yeah.
So finding the things that are unique about yourself and not being afraid to play that to the client. Like, honestly, if they really want a huge strategy firm that's going to bring 20 people, great, go find them because they'll be disappointed with us. That's not do it. So I think being really clear about who you are and what you can do and being not afraid to say to the client, look, either we're really a fit. What you're describing, you're not going to get that from those other consultancies and you will get it here. Or, you know what, maybe we're not a fit, or here's a way we can do that. And we don't say we won't work with those firms. So we will also work in partnership with them. It can be painful, but we do it.
Right. So, I mean, really what I'm hearing you say there is, and I think it's a great message, is this idea of focus on your strengths, don't try and compensate for your weaknesses.
Yep.
Right? Like there's,
yes.
if you feel that you can really add value and there's a fit with the client and that, you know, again, you can create the outcome that they're looking for, just because someone bigger may go after them or, you know, may even be like kind of in there already, doesn't mean that you can't win business and doesn't mean that you can't, you know, go after them. But I guess let's just dive into that for a moment, Mindy. How do you, from a mindset perspective, what are your thoughts? Because I think some consultants still feel like, well, there's no point in even us going after these larger companies, because why would a Fortune 500 organization or Fortune 100 organization or whoever it might be, like, why would they choose us if we have competitors that are much larger than us?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Because they're tired of those firms. They've used them for years and real change doesn't happen. I fundamentally believe that. We call ourselves in some ways the, can I use a real name or should I just say large firm? The McKinsey aftermarket, right? So we think of ourselves, we've been hired a number of times to come in after they've been paid $20 million to do org design work, to come in and say, can you make this thing work? Because no one's actually really doing it and it's not working the way it's supposed to. And it's like, yeah, that's right. Because you had a firm go off into a little room by themselves, design you a lot of org charts, bring it back in and say, here's what your company should look like. And I'm not arguing they have great analytics and they have, you know, just the resources they have to get after data and to have insights is huge. But they don't, you know, for most of those large firms, an add-on is, can we get a change management person in here on the team too? And we'll just throw that in for free because that's not really important. What's really where we're making our money is this big group of 20 people we're going to drop in and do analytics. And I think they hire us because they're frustrated from not getting real change. Now, I would say where we lose out to some of those firms probably consistently is if the leader, whether it be a business unit leader, a functional leader, a CEO, whatever, feels like they're doing the work and it needs to be certified, like they're taking something to the board and the board's not going to look at it unless they say, oh, we used McKinsey, and they say, oh, great. Well, then it must be great work, right? So we don't have that type of name brand recognition. So we, you know, at times we'll lose work for that reason. But, you know, again, we have to be okay with, and that's okay because we're not that firm.
Right.
You know, we're looking to work. The other piece is consistently, unless we're talking to the business leader, wherever the change is, you know, the epicenter is, and that can be a functional leader. It can be a general manager. It can be whatever. Unless we're talking to that person and really getting at what's keeping them awake at night and you know, cutting through kind of the lingo and the RFP stuff, we're unlikely to sell. You know, if we're talking to a procurement person, if we're talking to even sometimes HR leaders, even if it's on the talent side, you know, because they're having to take what we said go back in and sell it to someone.
Sure.
If we're not really at the epicenter of the sale and where the change needs to take place, it's unlikely it's going to happen. So that's why sometimes the sales process is slow, because we got to push and say we got to get to those people. And we're not a match for everyone. That's the other piece. I think there's been plenty of times where clients are like, thanks, but no. And we're like, that's a good choice. But those clients sometimes also call you back later. Right. So that's the other piece about this longevity, whether it's the one time at the conference or the one time we've had clients who haven't hired us, but then have referred us or said, boy, if I have another issue, I'll bring you in. And they do. Because we continue to work those relationships. But yeah, we haven't shied away. You have to make sure you have capacity to do what you're saying you can do.
Right.
But I think there's just a lot of fatigue from some of the investment versus are we getting real change that's happened through the years for people. And that works to our advantage.
Right. Let's come back to the capacity area in a moment. Just want to explore that with you. But before we do, you mentioned that sometimes you can experience a longer sales cycle time because it does take time to reach the top of the organization or to reach the ultimate decision maker. What have you found to be most effective in doing that? Because I think a lot of consultants have that experience where they get into the organization, maybe it's with a manager or senior manager, or even maybe it's a director. It's someone in the organization, but it's not the ultimate decision maker. It's not the person writing the check. And as you I think like very accurately said, if you're not talking to the ultimate decision maker, or if you don't actually have them involved in the sales process to a degree, then it's very unlikely, or it's much more challenging to win that sale. So how do you do that? What have you guys found as kind of the best practice or just the most effective approach to actually reach the ultimate decision maker?
I think a couple of things work. The first is if I can, and I, hate this cliche, but if I can get on the same side of the table with whoever I'm talking with and let them understand that I'm trying to help them, because they're the ones who are going back in internally and selling it, right? So if they're not the ultimate decision maker and writing the check, they have to go back in and ask somebody for money. And they have to say, I met with these people. I really like them. I think they can help us. That's really scary. So if I can get them in conversation for me to say, you know what, would it be helpful if we built a session, I came in and talked with your boss and we got a sense of what's going on in her mind or, what the issues are from their point of view. So I almost start my diagnostic before I've been hired. So part of our, regardless of the work we're doing, whether it's 360, leadership development work or whether it's a broad scale organization design work, we start with a qualitative diagnostic set of interviews. And so a lot of times I'll start those before I'm getting paid. And to the client or person I'm talking to, it's really helpful because then it's kind of like they're not having to represent me. I'm in there with them. And I don't go in, I resist the request to come in and present. So that's a big trap, right? So if they say, great, come in and bring your presentation and tell my boss what you're going to do. No. Because they've seen it. They didn't ask you to come in there. You're wasting 15 minutes or 30 minutes of their day and you're presenting slides to them. So no matter how many times we're asked to come in and present, we say, no, why don't we come in and talk to you about the issues? We'll follow up within 24 hours about what we think about those issues, what our insights are, what a proposed approach would be. But let me get in there and really understand what's going on. And if you can make that happen, you're much better off because the coming cold never works.
So what happens in the case where, or how do you guys approach, let's say that the contact you have says, oh no, I can't connect you to the CEO or they're very busy and don't have time to meet. Like, what do you do then?
Well, for me, that would be a red flag of how important the work really is, right? So
would you challenge them on that? Would you ask them about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we talk about the velvet hammer, which is, yes, challenging them on something they really don't want to hear and it's almost uncomfortable, but we do it. And we do it in ways that, we're here with you. We're working through with this. You're not, we're not calling you baby ugly, but we are saying, That's interesting. That really is a sign to me that I could be wrong, but that's a sign to me that maybe this work isn't very important or on their agenda. And this is one of the best examples always is when we get a call. So we've done a lot of integrated talent management build outs for organization with their HR organization, competency models, et cetera. We only do that work though if it is really part of the CEO's agenda for change. I'm going to change this company by being really clear about what leadership looks like and what the profile of leaders looks like. And we're going to work that into all of our HR systems, et cetera. That doesn't mean that I'm sitting in the room with the CEO all the time. But if the HR person is saying, oh no, the CEO, he doesn't have any time to talk about the people side of things. This is just, it's like, ooh, okay. So you know, that's not work we're necessarily going to do. So I think we help them think about, is this really a priority for the organization? Sometimes we help them figure out that the work they really should be doing is something else. And, you know, how do we help them? Again, you know, and a lot of times we'll have whoever that finder or collaborator is say, yes, you're so right. I've been trying to tell them that, but they won't listen to me. And so then we spend time saying, okay, how can we help you position this work? Not position us, but position these issues and position this work. So it may not be bring us into the room. It may be them going to do it. And maybe we're consulting to them to increase their own personal effectiveness with their boss or their peers or whatever the deciding body is.
Right. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. So you're really doing everything that you can to position them as the champion and to support them so that they feel much more comfortable. And I guess that's part of the conversation that you really focus on is figuring out like what will get this person to take the action that ultimately will move you forward, not just obviously for the sake of your business, but really because of the issue to help them to see the change or the impact that they want.
Yeah. And a lot of times they're just, you know, they're going after symptoms as opposed to what the real issue is. And so that's why, again, you know, it would be really rare, unless it's a client that knows us and worked with us for a long time, that we would have a conversation, write a proposal, and the work would start. It just doesn't happen that way because they're not, quite often what the real issue is not what they're talking about or willing to focus on. So another strategy, a lot of times we break, you know, as I was saying, all of our work starts with this diagnostic. A lot of times the only thing we sell initially is the diagnostic.
Right.
So what we'll say to a client is, you know what, you know, you wouldn't go into the doctor and tell them I have strep throat, give me, you know, antibiotics, and they would do it without doing a strep test. This is testing out to see, is it really strep? Is it something else? Let's treat the right issue here. So a lot of times that entry can be done by getting them to say, you know what, yes, this is a really critical issue. Maybe we don't know everything. Let's start with that diagnostic, and then we can figure out where to next. And maybe you don't need us. Maybe you need someone else. Maybe you need something else. So a lot of times we kind of back off, even if we think we know what the full engagement may be, we start with a diagnostic work.
Great. Really great information. Appreciate the examples there. Let's jump then back over here to capacity. How many consultants and kind of partners are you at total right now at Navalent?
We have 7 right now, full time.
Okay. So you're up to 7. You know, how did you get to that point? Like, at what point did you decide, you know what, we need to bring on more people? Was that right from the beginning? Is it something that evolved over time as you saw that the pipeline for business was improving?
Yeah, it's a hard one. You know, if you build it, they will come is really hard when you're a small firm. And we've been as many as 13 or 14 at one point in time. You know, it was a lot different when, before tax laws changed and people were 1099. And so, you know, our 7 are, there's owners and employees. So they're full-time employees. So they're not, you know, so that's a different commitment. We had a period of time where we were kind of 5, and the 5 of us have been here for quite some time, core. And about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we said, you know what? We need 5's too small. It's a weird thing about small consulting firms, kind of 3's. I don't know. This is just 3's okay. 5 is a weird number. 7, 8, or 9 is a good number. It's a strange, like 5 is like you don't have enough work or you have too much work, and you feel like you're kind of caught in that all the time. So about a year and a half ago, we said we need some new people to join Navalent. We have gone the route of hiring pros that have been running their own businesses for years. We've gone the route of hiring people that we knew that were kind of mid-career. And from all of that learning, we believed that we needed to hire some people that were earlier in career and could learn how to do things the way Navalent does it rather than bringing their own toolkit.
Right.
So, but that means that those people are not deployable immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And they're certainly not selling, right? And so we had to make a commitment as a firm to basically fund them for 2 years. And, you know, whether that means we have to take on some work that we would normally say no to, or we have to, you know, cut our own personal income to fund these things, whatever, you know, there's a whole bunch of things
Sure.
that means. But we knew that to continue to give our clients what they needed, to continue to build our own community and to have new thought and thinking in it, we needed to grow again, you know, go back up a little bit in size. So we made that commitment. It is such a tough one. And it's, you know, consulting, whether it's a big firm, you know, I worked for a big firm before I started Navalent, and it's always the issue, right? Do we have people sitting around on the beach, if you will, or do we have not enough people to do the work we've sold? And you're always stuck between one of those two choices.
And how do you approach when you do need to staff up or, you know, build a team for a large engagement that's coming online or that you want to go out and win? What have you found most effective to, like, just the best practices to find good people, other consultants or other contractors, whatever it might be, to do that?
Yeah.
What's worked really, really well for you guys?
Know them before you need them. Don't go looking for people once you've sold the work.
Yeah.
We've brought people in, and it was a train wreck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not because they were bad people or bad consultants. Sometimes it's because they're like, you know what? I only do executive coaching and that's all I want to do. And I'm like, well, this is a strategy project. And they're like, yep, well, you know, I'll go coach that guy while you do the strategy work. It's like, no, that's not what we need here. So again, you know, or they want to sell their own business. You know, you're bringing them in, or they don't, or they can't give you the flexibility you need in terms of timing. So we've all, you know, since we started, because Ron and I left a larger consulting firm, so we know tons of consultants that are out there in their own firms. And so we've always cultivated partnerships along the way. And some of those are partnerships with consultants who do different things. So we've got people that are total experts in the board space. We do some board work, but when it's really about really solely working with the board as opposed from the side of management to working with the board, I would call someone else. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for me to pretend to do that work. Sure. So we have people like that where it's reciprocal. And then people that we would bring in to do, you know, where we've got big projects, and it's just, I think the number one thing is knowing them, you know, and knowing that they will work the way you work and value your client relationships the same way you would. I think also that we're very transparent on the whole financial side of the equation as well, because that can be a bone of contention when you're partnering, right? So we're a pretty simple model. Here's what you're going to get paid per day, and here's what a day looks like, and here's how many days we're going to use you per month for the next 6 months. So being really transparent around that as well. Yeah,
that's a great share. And I think it's, you know, just so important to build that bench before you even need to call upon, you know, people to hit the field. Again, it's a longer term thinking. A lot of consultants don't think that they need to spend much time doing that, that they'll get to it later on. But it is one of those things that having the ability to call upon that bench can really provide a significant advantage. So that's absolutely. And it's hard to, you know, you also want to, especially if you know, find people you want to work with. If it's painful, the client will see it, right? So, you know, not just people who work the way you work or will use your frameworks or models, but are actually people you want to enjoy being around, because the work can be really hard. Definitely. Well, Mindy, this has been a lot of fun, and really appreciate you sharing your story here. What's the best way for people to learn more about you and your work and connect with you? Multiple ways. They can go on our website, which is navalent.com, or they can reach out to me, and I think there's a 1-800 number and an email in there, but they could also reach me at Mindy, M-I-N-D-Y, at navalent.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, Mindy Millward. So a couple ways to reach out. Terrific. Mindy, thanks again so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Michael.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.